Did you know that many of our everyday English words actually come from pronunciation mistakes? This is called misdivision. The word apron used to be called a napron.
This isn't a mistake, it isn't a mishearing, it isn't a mispronunciation, and I'm going to explain why. My name is Danny Heber, I'm a research linguist, I study the science of human language. When you hear someone talking, you don't hear individual sounds or individual words, you hear a continuous stream of speech, like this. This is a waveform and a spectrogram of me saying the phrase, an apron. But you tell me, just by looking at this spectrogram, can you tell me where one word ends and the next begins? Because that's what infants have to do when they learn how to speak. They have to figure out not just where the boundaries of the sounds are, but then which sounds belong to which words. Children take this messy stream of speech and have to pull patterns out of it and associate those patterns with the things happening around them in the world. But sometimes the patterns that children discover today are different than the patterns that we discovered when we were infants, and that's how language changes. Even two children that receive exactly the same linguistic input from adults can wind up with different internal grammars for how they understand language. On the surface, you'd never know the difference. They have what are called isomorphic grammars, two different grammatical systems that yield the same result. Whether you think the phrase is an apron or a napron, the phonetic result is this. In fact, we know that people actually do have slightly different grammars of the same language. Some people have a more rule-based approach to language where they internalize more general patterns, and other people have a more item-based approach to language where they memorize individual words, phrases, and idioms. And it's not until later in childhood, when you learn how to write, that you might even begin to realize that other people have slightly different grammars than you do. But you have to remember, the majority of people in history weren't literate. This made it very easy for people to reanalyze words in different ways. In fact, we have written evidence for just how much that N sound varied at the beginning of words during the Middle Ages. It was common for words to lose an N or gain an N and sometimes even switch back again. Even today, when most people are literate, writing doesn't really help because writing tends to lag behind spoken language by at least a generation. If Generation Alpha, the generation that comes after Gen Z, started saying napple instead of apple, the dictionaries wouldn't even catch on to this for another 30 years. Writing isn't the arbiter of language. Speakers changed language. And every generation is going to speak language slightly differently than the generation that came before it. And that's okay. There can be multiple ways of talking. There's no one correct way to do English. So that's why linguists call this phenomenon reanalysis or rebracketing or resegmentation rather than misanalysis or misbracketing or missegmentation. It's just a normal cognitive process of pattern recognition that sometimes causes language to change. If you want to learn more about how language works, give me a follow.